A film unlike any other, from a filmmaker unlike any other. Among my favorite in both cases, 1977's Eraserhead, created by David Lynch. This film not only can be interpreted in infinite ways, but is actually intended to be. A film that David Lynch poured himself into, creating his first feature length, and probably one of his more personal films. Rather, it is instantly recognizable or not. On the surface, the film is about a man named Henry.
Hello, I'm Henry.
Who very unexpectedly receives the news that he is a father. The father of a newborn. He is instantly stricken with both fear and curiosity, and immediately gives us the impression that time-wise, this news makes no sense.
There's a baby. It's at the hospital.
Mom!
And you're the father.
But that's impossible. It's only
Mother,
been...
they're still not sure it is a baby.
It's premature, but there's a baby.
The baby is also foreshadowed to have something very wrong with it. From this point, we watch as Henry struggles with all the emotions and unexpected events that are brought to him through this sudden change in his life. However, everything I just described is merely a keystone of a much larger structure. Eraserhead is a film about fears, anxieties, confusions, contemplations, and more, existing in a surreal world that might as well just be a dream, or even a concoction built purely by the state of Henry's apprehensions. As mentioned before, the film is one that can and will be interpreted in varying ways, so what follows contains elements of my personal take on the movie. Henry, who is oddly more relatable than you may initially think, is suddenly thrown into the fray of a life-changing situation, meeting up with a girl named Mary, who we are to believe is either his ex, or at the very least, someone Henry has been having relationship issues with. He goes to meet her parents for the first time, in what is basically the nightmare version of every man's first meeting of his girlfriend's parents.
Hello there.
Hello.
I feel the entire scene is a physical manifestation of some of Henry's phobias.
I thought I heard a stranger.
And all the discomforts he must be feeling meeting Mary's odd family manifest into unexpected and awkward moments of his social anxieties.
The people think pipes grow in their home. Well, they sure as hell don't. Look at my knee. Look at my knee. And then I got so I could move it a little, and I got so I could turn a faucet, and pretty soon I had my arm back again. Now I can't feel a damn thing in it. All numb. I'm afraid to cut it, you know?
Then, of course, there is the baby itself. This nameless thing that is somehow the child of Henry and Mary. This prop is something that to this day, David Lynch has never revealed how it was made or animated, only adding to the mystique of this bizarre infant. I have heard the thing described as both horrifying and cute, again lending itself to your own personal interpretation. But regardless, it isn't normal, and becomes the pull on the weight that Henry feels in his life. Throughout the film, there are other characters scattered throughout, such as the woman who lives across the hall from Henry, who I feel represents lust or a longing for a less grounded life, perhaps one that is more carefree and less predictable.
Oh, yeah?
I also see the woman as something forbidden to Henry, now that there is a child involved. There is also a woman that seems to live in Henry's radiator, which it is hard to tell if he is physically seeing her or perhaps imagining her. But I actually think she represents a welcomed form of death, or even the contemplation of suicide. She appears attractive and frightening at the same time, and at one point is shown stomping on what may look like fetuses of the baby, which may suggest she is inviting Henry to forget everything, destroy it, or leave it behind, and maybe join her in death. Because after all, as she says in her memorable and hypnotic song,
In heaven, everything is fine. In heaven, everything is fine.
the baby, I feel, represents everything from the fear of fatherhood to the responsibilities that can tie you into one place in life, whether you want to be there or not. Mary being the fear of being with someone you do not desire to be with forever. The city itself seems to be a nightmare world, where the very air leaks discomforting industrial sounds. And everything seems like it is on the verge of molding and falling apart. The fear of urban life, or perhaps the cruel conditions of the world around us, or even the dreading feeling that as life becomes more difficult, everything around us grows darker, closes in more, and makes escaping seem more difficult.
All I need is a decent night's sleep.
Why don't you just stay home?
In heaven, everything is fine.
There is a section of the film, though, where everything in Henry's life seems to collide, and pressures rise to the point of him going through some kind of surreal hell, where everything in his life becomes all the more intense around him. We are pulled into something of a nightmare with Henry that is darker, deeper, and even stranger than anything we have seen so far, creating tonight's scene. Henry's head is removed, and is then replaced with that of his child. I feel as if this is trying to represent the moment when one must admit the bringing of a child into the world means it is no longer about you. However, the grim way this is represented in the scene seems to be admitting that Henry is not in favor of this, and that he ultimately feels that the child will do nothing but overtake him in every aspect, to the point where there is no longer a Henry. He must surrender himself to the things in his life that are overwhelming him, making Henry feel ultimately erased. Note that his hands are still moving during this, which could be a meaning that he is forced to keep at it, working, moving, even after he has given his all. Possibly. It is just something I think of when viewing the scene. The scene continues further, as what appears to be a floor covered in blood finally consumes him, and we are then shown that his head winds up on the side of the street. And after being retrieved by a child, the head is brought to a man who uses parts of Henry's brain, seemingly, to create the head of a pencil eraser.
Hiya, Sonny. What do you got there?
Which I feel may be Henry coming full circle to the realization that he is nothing more than this now.
It's okay.
However, there is also a more positive, at least for Henry, outcome I have interpreted before. That maybe this is Henry's fight back moment. For when ciphering his mind, what is removed is his one and only thought and desire to erase his past, or his mistakes. But if he cannot physically do that, then maybe he can instead again erase himself, but this time of his own accord.
In heaven, everything is fine.
There is more to the film beyond this that leads to Henry's final decisions and the film's conclusion, containing imagery that may be disturbing or satisfying, or a mix of both, depending entirely on how you interpret it. And well, however you choose to do so, that's fine.
Eraserhead, and David Lynch films in general, hold a very high place in the world of influencers for me. In fact, in high school, I actually wrote an essay on the film and gave a presentation of it in front of an English class, with scenes from the movie actually projected behind me as I gave my thoughts on the film. In conclusion, I think everybody sat at least one desk away from me for the rest of the year. But films like this can do that, and that's actually something that makes them all the more appealing to me, because films like this one are not for everyone. But those of you who can look at something and interpret it in more ways than one can find themselves getting lost in abstract creations like Eraserhead. Call it horror, drama, comedy, art, whatever you want to call it, however you see it, is fine. But a lot of people will recognize this film as an important one.
With
A filmmaker who this film was a starting point for. A filmmaker who has reached people all over the world. Myself included.